It was late on a Friday evening, the kind of time when most people had already finished their work week and were either unwinding at home or out with friends. But for Sarah, the night was just beginning. Sarah had been working at Tesla's local service center for over 2 years. She loved her job, the environment, the people, and the thrill of being a part of something groundbreaking. But the passion she had for her work couldn't shield her from the harsh reality of living paycheck to paycheck. That evening, after already working an exhausting 8-hour shift, Sarah had signed up for an additional 4-hour shift. Her financial situation was tight, and the extra shift meant an extra $60, money she desperately needed. But as she stood at the counter, wrapping up the last few tasks of her shift, something unexpected happened. The cafeteria worker, a man she'd seen around the office for months, walked up to her with a sympathetic smile. "Sarah, are you all right? You look like you haven't eaten all day." She tried to smile, brushing it off. "I'll be fine. Just need to finish this shift, and then I'll grab something to eat at home." But the worker wasn't convinced. "You sure? I can get you something. Just tell me what you want." Her stomach growled loudly, betraying her resolve, but with the little money she had left, Sarah knew she couldn't afford a meal from the cafeteria. So she smiled weakly. "I'll be okay, thanks though." The worker hesitated, his gaze lingering on her. After a moment, he said, "If you're really hungry, there's no shame in asking. You've been working hard. You deserve something to eat." Sarah froze. The tension between pride and necessity weighed heavily on her shoulders. She hadn't expected to find herself in this position, not at a place like Tesla. Yet here she was, barely scraping by and feeling utterly helpless. "Actually," Sarah said quietly, "could you just send me a small sandwich? I don't have much money right now." The worker nodded, clearly sympathetic, but before he could turn away, a voice interrupted them from behind. "That's unacceptable. You shouldn't be working yourself into the ground just to make ends meet." Sarah turned around to see none other than Elon Musk himself, standing in the doorway of the cafeteria. He had been touring the service center earlier that day and had apparently come back to check on things. His eyes were sharp, his posture commanding, but his words held an unexpected compassion. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but it's hard not to notice a good worker being mistreated," Elon continued. "You shouldn't have to beg for food. Not here." The cafeteria worker, taken aback, stammered, "I didn't mean it like that, Mr. Musk. I was just trying to help her out." "No, you did the right thing," Elon said, his gaze never leaving Sarah's, "but it's not enough. No one should be left struggling when they give their all." Sarah was stunned, speechless. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, was standing here talking to her like she was a person worth helping. In all her time at the company, she had never imagined this kind of encounter. "What do you mean?" Sarah managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. Elon smiled, though it was a little tired. "You're working double shifts. You're taking on extra work just to survive, but I can see that's not enough. Tell you what, I'm coming with you tonight. I want to see for myself what you're going through." Before she could say anything else, Elon turned and nodded for her to follow. The room seemed to hold its breath as the two of them walked out of the cafeteria and into the parking lot. The workers watched in stunned silence, unsure of what was happening. Sarah's heart raced. She had never in a million years imagined that Elon Musk would follow her home, much less see the small apartment where she lived alone, struggling to make ends meet. The drive to Sarah's apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the car and the occasional streetlight flashing by. Elon sat in the passenger seat, his expression unreadable. Sarah's hands were tightly gripping the steering wheel, her knuckles white. She had never expected this, not in a million years. Why was he doing this? Why had he followed her? They arrived at her apartment complex, a modest building tucked away in a quieter part of the city. It wasn't much, but it was home. Sarah parked the car and sat there for a moment, unsure how to proceed. She felt the weight of Elon's presence beside her, and a part of her wanted to tell him it was unnecessary, that he didn't need to see the truth behind her struggles. But another part, the part that had been too proud for too long, knew she couldn't turn back now. When she stepped out of the car, Elon followed her. They walked up the creaky stairs, the quiet echoes of their footsteps the only sound. Sarah unlocked the door, pushing it open with a slight squeak. The apartment was small, with just a living area, a small kitchen, and one bedroom. It wasn't much, but it had everything she needed. She had made it work as best as she could. The first thing Elon noticed when he stepped inside was the starkness of the place. The furniture was minimal and the walls were bare. There were no pictures, no decorations, just the essentials. A worn-out couch sat in the corner, and a table with a pile of unopened bills and paperwork was at the center. On the small kitchen counter was a single pot, with just a few cans of food stacked beside it. Sarah motioned to the couch, offering him a seat, though she didn't sit herself. She had never intended for anyone to see how little she had. "I don't really have much to offer," she said quietly, feeling her cheeks burn. "I'm still figuring things out." Elon sat down, his eyes scanning the room as he took it all in. He noticed the frayed edges of the couch cushions, the faded rug on the floor. The place wasn't filthy, but it was clear that Sarah had been making do with what little she had. "I've been here for a while," she continued, avoiding his gaze. "It's not much, but it's mine." She swallowed hard, the lump in her throat growing. "Sometimes I don't know how to keep going. I'm always working, but it's never enough." Elon watched her closely, his expression softening. For a man who was used to luxury and power, the starkness of Sarah's world hit him harder than he expected. He had known the struggles of employees, of working-class people, but seeing it firsthand was different. He had never truly understood how hard it could be, how crushing the weight of everyday survival was for some. He stood up slowly and walked over to Sarah, who still hadn't looked up. "Sarah, you shouldn't have to live like this," he said gently, his voice steady, but filled with an underlying compassion. She looked up at him, her eyes wide and vulnerable. "I don't know what else to do. I can't quit. I can't afford to." Elon paused for a moment, thinking. He knew he couldn't just walk away from this. He could do something. He had to do something. "How much longer can you keep going like this?" he asked softly. Sarah shrugged, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "I don't know, but I'll keep going until I can't." Elon took a deep breath. "You shouldn't have to fight this battle on your own. And you shouldn't be living like this when you're giving everything to Tesla. We need to make a change." Elon stood still for a moment, letting the weight of the situation settle around him. Sarah had been working tirelessly, giving everything she had to the company, and yet here she was, living in a small, bare apartment, barely scraping by. It wasn't right. He turned to her, determination in his eyes. "Sarah, this isn't how it's supposed to be. You shouldn't have to struggle like this. You're a valuable part of Tesla. You're important." Sarah, her hands still trembling, looked up at him, the raw emotion in her eyes betraying the mask she had worn for so long. "I just don't know how much longer I can keep doing this, Elon. I keep pushing, but it feels like I'm stuck in place." Elon's heart ached for her, and a resolve formed within him. No one should have to choose between their job and their well-being. This is why I'm here. He stepped closer to her, his tone soft but firm. "You've been carrying this burden alone for too long. It's time for change." Elon paused, looking around her modest apartment once more. "I'll make sure you have what you need. I'll help. No one who works as hard as you should be living like this." Sarah blinked in disbelief. "You're serious?" "Yes," he said with a gentle but powerful conviction. "You've earned a life that's more than this, and I'm going to make sure you have it." Elon reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "I'm arranging for a raise, a housing allowance, and we'll make sure you have the support you need to get ahead, not just survive." He looked at her, a quiet strength in his eyes. "You're part of the Tesla family, Sarah, and we take care of our own." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she took in his words. The weight she had carried for so long seemed to lift, replaced by the promise of something better, something she hadn't dared to hope for. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Elon gave her a reassuring smile. "You've earned it." And in that moment, Sarah knew that her life was about to change, forever.